This is SWTN.
My name is Anthony Anderson. I'm an Iraq War veteran. I was a member of the Wisconsin National Guard. I served from 2002 to 2008. Volunteered for both my deployments. The first was to Baghdad, Iraq, Camp Liberty, 2004 to 2005. Second deployment to LSA Anaconda in Balad, Iraq, 2007 to 2008. I served as an infantryman. Served for a total of 6 years. I've been out of the military since 2008. I've been working for an organization called Dry Hooch for 2.5 years, providing peer support for veterans. And my most recent endeavor was a partnership on a project that Tom and I worked on called Veterans Trek, where we walked from Milwaukee to Los Angeles, Santa Monica, California, in order to raise money for Dry Hooch, raise awareness of issues influencing veterans and their families, and also take the time that I needed and Tom needed for himself to kind of address our own needs post-service, post-deployment.
My name is Tom Voss, Iraq War veteran. I was deployed to Mosul, Iraq from 2004 to 2005. I served as a battalion scout in the infantry. I got out in 2006 and located back in Milwaukee and have been involved with the organization that's Dry Hooch of America. Anthony and I also took on the responsibility of fundraising for this organization through Veterans Trek, where we were able to raise $105,000 for the organization.
How the walk came about was I called up Anthony and asked him if he had a rucksack that I could borrow. And the reason I was doing that was because I was at a point in my life where I felt that I needed to make some drastic changes. Otherwise, I would keep repeating the past. And a lot of that was rooted in my deployment and events from my deployment. So I needed some time to decompress, and I thought that walking out to California to meet up with some of my veteran buddies that I deployed with would be a good way to do that. So I called Anthony and asked him if he had a rucksack. He asked me why. I kind of explained to him what I was planning on doing, and he told me that he was in the same boat and that he could use the time as well, and asked if he could come along. I said no problem with that. Now, from there, Anthony said we should probably do a fundraiser for Dry Hooch along with this, and out of that came also an awareness campaign for veterans issues. So we try to take that opportunity to educate the non-veteran community about the issues that are facing veterans today, such as veteran suicide. 22 veterans are committing suicide every day, and that's pretty tragic. And we want the non-veteran community to understand these issues that veterans are facing when they come home. So we had those three components. So we had the decompression for us, the fundraising for Dry Hooch, and then the general awareness campaign of veterans issues. So we got together and planned out the route. We did the website, we did all the social media and the promotion for this in about 3 months. We put it together. And then we ended up traveling, I believe, over 2,700 miles, 107 cities. So we went Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska, Colorado, south to New Mexico, Arizona, then California, finishing.
When Tom called me and asked me, about a rug that he could borrow, and we started to discuss how we could do this together and really kind of make it something more, we started sharing what we wanted to do with people. And yeah, people said we were crazy. A number of people said, there has to be a quicker way, there has to be something that's less extreme. They looked at us and what we were trying to accomplish as unattainable. It was only after we achieved all of our goals that even people in our families came to us and said, we didn't think you'd be able to raise the amount of money that you raised. It was interesting, some people in my family said, I thought maybe you'd be able to raise $50,000. Before we left, we had raised $50,000. I think that people thought our intentions were good, but we were taking on something that we had never done before, which was completely true and valid. And they used that as the foundation for thinking that we couldn't achieve what we were doing. The one thing that they overlooked was the tenacity of veterans. That when we set a goal for ourselves, we not only set it and share it with other people to make it real, it becomes more real to us, and we don't let obstacles get in our way. From your beginning in the military, you're taught that any obstacle, whether it's a person or a set of circumstances, can be overcome. And if you can't do it in a team, you damn well better be able to do it as an individual. So despite the number of things that got in our way, whether it was lack of support from businesses providing the equipment that we needed, we adapted to that challenge. We put out the request to the veteran community, and anyone from an individual to a VFW post would give us the things that we needed, whether it was shoes or sleeping bags or anything of that nature. When it came to getting the word out, we were limited, to basically what we had. So we just utilized social media and the regular media, and as word continued to grow, we got more attention, which helped offset the challenge of trying to let people know and raise money. I think that when it came to people thinking we were crazy for what we were doing, we asked people very directly, do you think we're crazy for doing this? I remember putting that on our social media, and people said yes, but in a good way. So I think that the support that we received took a lot of the concerns that we maybe kept to ourselves, kept private, as to whether or not we felt we could do it. And it became something that didn't even become a question to us, that it didn't matter what the weather would be or physical obstacles, mental, emotional, whatever. We would achieve them. We had great support from our family and our friends. We had excellent support from the veteran community here in Milwaukee, and then that became that much more in the different communities that we went through. It just continued to reinforce the importance of what we were doing, which really made it impossible for us to not achieve what we were trying to do. There was definitely physical obstacles, but everything we did had its own challenges.
Right. There's emotional challenges, mental challenges. You're away from your family and friends. There's a sacrifice there. You're, putting extra strain on your family while you're gone. So there's a lot of things weighing on us, I think, as we, progress through the trip.
I think from the day that we announced that we were going to do it, we really put an expectation on ourselves that we shared, in the community. That expectation then was raised exponentially every day that we were closer to leaving. And then certainly once we left, we had thousands of people following us on our website, social media, constant exposure from traditional media that never really allowed us to get off track. It didn't really matter what was happening. The way that we utilized the internet, the way that the network worked, we'd go into one community, and it was not uncommon for someone in that community to have already heard about us. When they recognized that the next community or the one after that, we didn't know anyone, they would work their own networks, veteran or non-veteran, to get us the help that we needed. I think the biggest challenge for us was we talked a lot about how preparing for this walk was like preparing for deployment. You have to get all your personal affairs in order. Like Tom said, it puts additional strain on your family. I have a wife and a daughter. I needed to make sure that things at home were squared away. Tom has a girlfriend and family. He has to make sure that they aren't going to be worrying about him, that they can get the information they need to feel comfortable with him being gone. How are we going to arrange all that? But then additionally, we're going into the unknown, quite literally. Never been to these areas. Don't know how we'll be received. And furthermore, we don't know where we're going to stay. The biggest challenge was the logistics, not getting the equipment. If we didn't have it, we were going to find a way to get through it. It was, where do we stay when it's freezing cold? Where do we stay when it's pouring rain? Where do we find food when we have no money? Things of that nature. That's where the veteran community really stepped up. They would hear that we were coming into town. They'd reach out to us and say, and say, stay at my house. Do your laundry here. Let me feed you. It got so much so that even non-veterans would do it. Pull over on the side of the road. You guys have a place to eat lunch today? We'll get something in the next town. Well, here's $10. Buy yourself lunch. Things of that nature that really helped us take the edge off the things that we couldn't control. Just constant support. There were lulls that we had to kind of figure out for ourselves. But really, when we left, I did not think that we would have the reception that we did for 7 states, to have it be sustained, to have it be so wide, to have it be so enthusiastic. I thought that that was really made it possible for us to not just achieve it, but achieve it in the manner that we did.
About how long did it take you from start to finish?
We left August 30th and we finished February 1st, so it took us like just a little over 5 months to complete the trek.
You ever get comments about Forrest Gump?
Yeah.
Forrest Gump,
Duck Dynasty was the worst.
If We Were Brothers.
If We Were Brothers. We got ZZ Top once,
Yeah,
which was nice.
it was a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, that was good.
I mean, I think probably the comment that we got most was, why don't you get a job? And that's like, well, you have to understand that what we're doing is much greater than what we're trying to achieve for ourselves. Like we said, we were taking that time, at least for 1/3 of it, was meant for Tom and myself to achieve a personal goal, to achieve some sense of healing, or at least address our own issues. When we're doing that, we have an expectation for ourselves that when people approach us, they want to know, well, how do you take this time? How do you do this? Well, look at the effect that's going on in the veteran community right now. Like Tom mentioned, 22 veterans a day committing suicide, high unemployment, high substance abuse issues, high homelessness issues, high familial discord, all of these things. You're asking me what I want to do for a job. I think that what we're doing right now is far more important, that we try to affect the lives of other people than we be concerned necessarily solely for ourselves. I think that one of the things about Dry Hooch is that idea that we want to bring in and inform and educate the non-veteran community. The issues affecting veterans right now are wide and they're very deep. So I think that for us to take that time and really just kind of carry over a lesson learned in the military about selfless service and say, look, when your service ends, your service to your brothers doesn't. We can take this time, we can do our part. Hopefully, it will motivate those that aren't seeking their own help to do that. And it did. And we were told explicitly by those that followed us what they did to change their lives. But then hopefully it motivates the non-veteran community through education. Now you know very clearly what the problems are. Now it's incumbent on you to act. No longer can you just sit here and say, yeah, I know there's a problem. You have to be compelled to act. To do something as dramatic as walking across the country, it's just the vehicle for information. That's really all it is. Now that people know it, how are they going to do something about it? So the other concerns were really, I was indifferent to them. I started working for Dry Hooch in September of 2011. Tom was currently employed by Dry Hooch at that time. I came in, I was a student at UWM. I needed a job. Tom did my interview. We became colleagues here. When Tom stopped working here, I continued in a role here, and it got to the point where it was like, this place can do great things. This place is providing a space for veterans that have searched, in some cases, especially with Vietnam veterans, for several decades, for a place where they feel comfortable, where they feel like their issues can be, if not resolved, certainly addressed. We also recognized the importance of peers, of veterans helping other veterans, not only in what it provided for us personally, but how we saw it affecting the veteran community. So the importance of Dry Hooch, really, if we take the organizational structure out of it, the importance of Dry Hooch is they recognize that it takes a veteran to understand a veteran, that it takes a veteran to help another veteran, and that it takes veterans to educate non-veterans on how to be involved. That was what we were really striving to achieve in our assistance through the monetary donations of Dry Hooch, was to provide Dry Hooch a greater opportunity to continue to serve the veterans that are utilizing their services, and that's what we wanted to achieve.
Where do you see your involvement going from here, whether it's Dry Hooch or anyplace else?
Well, I think both Tom and I recognize the importance of what we achieved personally through Veterans Track. The healing that we took away for ourselves, the lessons that we learned, the time that we were able to spend kind of supporting one another on a number of different issues that affected us. Sometimes it was the same issue affecting both of us. Sometimes they were separate. But how that thing, how the walk, how the support from the walk helped us. So I think that we're both very desirous of finding a way to make that possible for other veterans through future treks. When it comes to Dry Hooch, I think that recognizing the important place it has in the veteran community, especially here in Wisconsin, southeastern Wisconsin, it's important to maintain, if for no other reason than, like I said, there are a number of veterans that have searched for a long time for a place where they feel comfortable enough to admit that they have an issue that they need to work on. Maintaining this place and ensuring that it's here to help those veterans, I think, is very important. And so I think that we both want to make sure that Dry Hooch is here for the long haul, but at the same time, we recognize what can happen outside. We recognize what can happen when you get together with a group of veterans and you put yourself out into nothing, what can be achieved. So I think that we definitely want to try to utilize both.
I got out active duty service in 2006. Right away, I just tried to jump back into what I thought was a normal life and what normal people did. So I got an apartment, got a job, started going to school right away. So you start piling these things on, and I was just kind of shoving away my deployment and what had happened to me there, and that kind of took on a snowball effect for me, and ended up crashing and burning, and realizing I was in a place where I needed assistance. Coming back is difficult because you don't have many shared experiences with the people back home. All those experiences are with the guys you served with, the guys you fought next to, and after you get out, you feel like you're secluded because you have buddies in California, Texas, on the East Coast, Iowa, wherever. They're spread out all over the country, and no one knows what you've been through, so you feel pretty isolated. That happened a lot with me, and I would have issues sleeping. I would have issues trusting people, connecting with people, being in crowded areas, and I would drink to sleep. So those things really pushed me in a direction to go seek support for myself. And
by doing that, I think that really saved my life.
What about the before I get to you? What about the walk itself? What about that helped decompress you?
Right. Well, the idea behind it was I was saying before that I started taking on all these new tasks and all these new different things, and when you do that, you're not able to put in the time and effort to kind of sort through your employment, sort through incidences that cause you trouble. And by committing myself to this walk, gave me an opportunity to push everything else aside and really focus in on what issues are affecting me, have affected me, how they're affecting my daily life, how they're affecting my relationships with family and friends, and really, focus in to try to work through these things. And you can't really do that when you have a job, going to school, trying to pay rent. All these things, kind of take the forefront of your life. So this trek allowed me to really, quiet all the noise and focus on myself for a change and really figure out where I want to be in the future.
I think for me, I'm going to echo many of the sentiments that Tom just shared. Where it's slightly different was the fact that I had an additional deployment. And how it's different is that when I came home, I experienced a number of the same issues that Tom did. I had issues relating to people. I was the only person that I knew that had done what I had done. The vast majority of the people that I served with lived in different parts of the country. I didn't have connection to them. I kind of drifted. I had my family who had never dealt with anything like a deployment, that they were going through their own things, and simultaneously I'm going through my own. We were very out of sync. What occurred because of that was a number of arguments, a number of hurt feelings, so much so to the point that it was unfortunate for me to recognize that the only emotion that I could feel with any regularity was anger. I was very numb to everything. I could laugh and joke with my friends, but I couldn't feel any sense of satisfaction or happiness. The day-to-day issues, paying your rent, paying your car loan, going to school, all these things that are commonplace for non-veterans. I'm sitting there trying to learn the value of why it is I'm doing what I'm doing, given that I've just experienced something at age 21 and 22 that is quite extraordinary. When I came home, I had issues sleeping to the point where, like Tom, I would drink not because I wanted to socialize, but because I wanted to get drunk so I could fall asleep. It got to the point where one day I recognized that going to the bar with my friends meant that my friends were going to the bar. My goal was not to be there to have fun with them. My goal was to be there to get drunk, and they just happened to be there as well. The difference between my experience and Tom's experience when I say the second deployment was that I had been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder after my first deployment, and it made people question why I would volunteer for a second, given that I had these issues. Well, I felt it was my duty to do it. There were a number of reasons why, but ultimately, if I boil it down, it would come to I'm physically fit, I'm mentally able. Like, why should someone go for their third or fourth time? I can go for my second. The problem is that my family anticipated the same result upon my second homecoming as they did my first. And so again, it created a large disconnect between me and my family. The value of the walk, even though it created separation between my family and I, was, as Tom said, you strip away all of the distractions. You strip away email, text, social media, work, school, all of that stuff, and you focus exactly on what you want to focus on. There are a number of days that I spent walking, thinking about how anger influences my life. Do I allow it? Am I fighting it? Any number of things. Communication, how I communicate with people. I think ultimately the value, the personal value of the walk, beyond stripping away all of the kind of superfluous things of life, was that it afforded Tom and I an opportunity to be honest with ourselves in a place where it required absolute honesty. Am I failing or am I achieving? How am I doing it? How do I want to do it better? We had one another to support each other as we went along, and then I think the beauty part was we met hundreds of veterans along the way that reinforced the lessons that we were learning about ourselves and the importance of why we were doing what we were doing. And they were very explicit in how they shared that with us. And I think that when we got to the point where we wanted answers for ourselves, we didn't have to wade through the course of the day to find them. We woke up every day and they were there in front of us. And so I think that that was very valuable to us, that every day we set up the importance of the next, whereas back here, you just kind of exist. Out there, you make your own existence. And so I think it was incredibly important to us. The biggest difference between coming home the first time and the second time was that I had the experience. So when I came home the first time, maybe I was a little bit naive as to how it would be to come home. Maybe I was taking for granted the changes that happened in me, and more importantly, the changes that happened in my family in my absence. The second deployment allowed me an opportunity to be proactive, but coming from a place of knowledge, where I wasn't hypothesizing how things may or may not be. I was basing them on the precedent of the first homecoming. So what I was able to do was be more proactive. Even if I felt okay, I should probably talk to someone. Even if I feel like things are going right, I should probably double check that, not take for granted. The problem was that my family, specifically my wife, I think she anticipated that I would come home and things would be good again for a couple months like it was the first time, and I'd fall off. The problem was that I didn't feel the same way. I felt like I was in a better place. And so this time, a lot of the issues I felt like we were dealing with were issues rooted in her fear of me coming home and the fallout from it, to where before I could even address my own things, I needed to make things right with her. I needed to get her fears taken care of. And basically the best way to do that was to demonstrate that the things she was afraid of weren't going to happen again. It's especially taxing on you when you feel like you're having to prove yourself to someone. When you feel like you're having to do the things that you're doing as a demonstration of you having your stuff together, as opposed to this is how we are as a couple. I found myself having to go through extra motions to kind of reinforce what I was saying. When it finally got to the point where she accepted that what I was saying was true, I was so exhausted from having spent so much time trying to say, like, things will be fine, you just need to come around. But by the time she did come around, things weren't fine anymore. I was tired of having to say, like, things are good and showing it, to the point where, again, that synchronicity, we were just out of the loop with one another. It takes time. And so I think that second deployment, it showed me that no matter what I do for myself, there's this whole second element, residual things from the past that are still influencing. And so it really takes an extraordinary amount of energy to get things back right.
So with your return on the first deployment, it was kind of like, I don't know if I'm paraphrasing here, but it was kind of like you were working more on yourself, and on the return of the second deployment, you're kind of working on the people around you more?
I think so. I think the first time, everyone kind of expected me to come home and we'd pick right back up from where we were and things would continue as normal. My wife and I had been married for a month before I left on my first deployment, so maybe this kind of idea that we'd come home and we'd pick up being a married couple and kind of go forward, well, now we have all this deployment baggage that we kind of have to go through. Unfortunately, because we hadn't had the experience before, I focused more on myself, and I kind of overlooked all of the traumas or whatever that my family had gone through, and I kind of left that up to them. Like, you figure that out. I got my own stuff to deal with. Whereas the second time, I felt like I had a much better base to address my own things, that I spent much more energy trying to help them along. And again, that goes back to the synchronicity. Like, we're not in sync. Where my energy is going and where your energy is going, you're worried about me, I'm worried about you. So we're not doing the things for one another or ourselves that we should be doing. It takes time to do that. It takes experience to do that. And again, to kind of echo what I said before, that's where a place like Dry Hooch or a peer-to-peer approach works, is that had I had a peer prior to coming home the first time that could have helped me anticipate some of these things, I could have been much more proactive. It took me falling down a lot to learn how to not do that.
Both Anthony and I really praise the Vietnam veterans that we've had contact with here through Dry Hooch. They've really helped us in many, many ways that I don't even think they know. But they basically give us insight to what they've gone through, and we're presently going through it with having deployments under our belts. They're giving us their wisdom and experiences so we can kind of learn. So they don't give us specific directions of what we should do, but they give us their own examples of what happened to them and what's happened to other veterans that they know, and kind of forewarn us of some of the pitfalls that they've gone through.
Has it all been kind of the same from generation to generation, or have you noticed big differences?
There's a lot of similarities. I mean, you have, just for an example, we have, veterans that say, don't go down this road because now my wife, I'm on my third marriage, my family won't talk to me. Just all these things that they've experienced, and they're letting us know kind of what to look out for.
Even suicide, veteran suicide is not a new phenomenon. Certainly PTSD is not a new phenomenon. It's existed for as long as conflict has existed. But more Vietnam veterans committed suicide than died in Vietnam. Well, now we're finding that 22 veterans a day, especially a lot of those veterans are older veterans. The issues perpetuate. And without some sort of change, without knowing what it is you're dealing with, you really are spinning your wheels. You don't know to not do this. So like Tom said, they don't give us explicit direction. They teach us anecdotally. This is what happened in my life. And they tell us the story of their life, for better or worse, with 4 decades of experience post-combat on what went well and what didn't, personally and professionally. And from that, we're able to take away and glean the information we need to kind of set ourselves up for the direction we want to go. I'm in my early 30s, Tom's in his late 20s. A lot of these Vietnam veterans are in their 60s and early 70s. They have decades, literally decades of experience on what it means to survive in combat, come home, and try to pick up your life. I think it would be a sin to not acknowledge that and not learn from it.
Has the government been much help for you guys, whether it's your own branch of the military that you were in or some auxiliary organization or anything?
For me, I've utilized the VA for mental health. I've used it in some cases for primary care, far more for mental health than primary care. I was able to get a college degree through the GI Bill. I was able to buy a home through a VA home loan. So certainly on the benefit side, the government has done what it said it would. That said, I, like many veterans, have had struggles getting what has been promised in a timely manner and thoroughly. I think that to see true change, to see things that are really going to be effective and impactful, it's going to have to happen at the community level. If for no other reason than government has shown forever how inefficient it is and how out of touch it is with each community. Well, every community knows its community members and knows what resources it has at its disposal. Let's try to affect this stuff at the community level where it's most impactful. the thing that I would mention most is that there are a number of veterans, combat, non-combat, it doesn't matter what branch, that are struggling with any number of issues. Sometimes they struggle with more than one issue. When you recognize that someone is abusing substances or having issues with their family, nothing in your life ever gets better just with time. It's not a physical injury. You can't say like, well, I sprained my ankle, so elevate it for 2 weeks and I'll be good. These things that have changed us from war, they take more than time. And if you just leave it up to time, they'll get worse. You have to be proactive. If you see someone is struggling, you have to be there. If they push you away, you can't take that personally. You have to be persistent. I think that veterans are a real resource, and not to be sappy or cliched, but they're a real treasure for the country. I think that they provide great things beyond insights on geopolitical things. What it means to serve your community, what it means to be selfless, to sacrifice, to just simply say thank you and feel that because you show some sort of gratitude that it will continue, I think is faulty logic. I think that for those that sacrifice, they have to see some sort of reciprocity, otherwise one day there will be a call and no